Welcome, everyone, to the Boiling Point podcast. This is episode 81, Predator Exposures, the Real and the Fake. I'm going to be joined by the remaining three of the founding five of Pennsylvania Predator Hunters, Decoys Kim and Decoy Diane, and, of course, the man who is behind the exposures and handles a lot of the coordination of the organization, Mike. Welcome, Kim and Mike. Welcome back to the Boiling Point podcast. And Diane, thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And now I just want to tell a little story because of how I got the idea to do this episode. Someone hit me up on my Boiling Point podcast page and asked me to look at another exposure group. And the person that was talking to me said that they were a fake exposure group and that they were trying to exploit people. So I looked into it. I did some investigating and I looked into it, and I could not find for the life of me an actual exposure at all. It's always this guy on camera saying, "Hey, send me your ID, send me money, sign up. We're protecting the kids." But no actual exposures. Now, I also went to another page that this person told me about who was supposed to be against this exposure group, who was trying to get together everybody that they've tried to exploit, and all on one page, and they're trying to answer back. Well, I checked out that page, and that looked like just fake also. Nothing but these two guys, the leaders of each page, going back and forth at each other. No actual content whatsoever. So that's why I wanted to do this episode, because it's like a fad now. Predator hunting is sort of a fad now. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it seems like every time we turn around, it's a new group, it's a new page. There's always something new going on with that. And
it's not a new fad. You know, it's how it's been for the past few years.
Okay.
Pages pop up, and then they, do their money grab or whatever it is, and then they disappear again, But I checked out I went to the YouTube page. You sent me the link last night, and the one video I saw, there was only a few, but the one video is over 4 hours long, and it was a live of him sitting there. It was like a class. He referred to it as a class. I fast forwarded through it, but how to start your own decoy page and stuff. And he went through and he's in these nasty Facebook groups filled with predators, and he's like reading the posts to his viewers. He didn't accomplish anything except for telling people where these groups are. And if he was a legitimate predator hunter, the last thing he would want is to do a live on, "Hey, you want to do this? This is how you do it. Just make a decoy profile, and then that's all you need. There you go." That's complete bullshit.
Yes, absolutely. As we've talked about before, there's a lot that goes into actually making a legitimate exposure site. And that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys here, because there's a lot of fake ones out. And furthermore, there's a lot of fake ones out there that want money from you, that want you to pay for like a membership or whatever. And that's where you guys don't do that. You guys don't even have a storefront for some of your apparel, against my own advice, for that reason, because you guys don't want to get into all that, which I completely respect. But that's why I wanted to do this episode, because there's a lot of fake ones. How can we tell the difference? What are some things that people could look at to see the difference between a legitimate exposure group and a fake one, or someone who's just looking for money?
I'd say the first thing to look for is the Cash App or the PayPal link. If that's like pinned and posted, or if they mention it every few seconds, that's your indicator right there. That's the easiest way.
If they want money.
Yeah, if they're just asking for money the whole time, yeah.
How many now you've said on some of the Inside the Exposures that you don't work with other groups before that reason, but have the other groups you have worked with, were they legitimate? Did you have to do your own homework to make sure they were legitimate before you worked with them?
Yeah, it was people that we were already familiar with. There's a whole community, and most reputable teams know the other teams, you know what I mean? And there is generally a a conduit for communication between teams. But there's a lot of drama that goes along with that, so it's better off just to be the lone wolf.
What drama
most
is
of the time.
what drama could come with that? Like, I'm just trying to imagine what drama could come from two groups working together to try and expose somebody.
Well, the drama comes more not while collaborating. The drama usually comes just from behind the scenes, like he said, she said bullshit. It's no different than any workplace or any kind of community online where, regardless of what it's about, there's going to be gossip and shit like that. And most of the drama is based on gossip and, picking little shit apart for no reason.
Between the groups.
Yeah.
Okay. I find that interesting. Let me talk to the decoys, Kim and Diane. Now with these fake exposure groups, especially the one that I had Mike look into, where he's giving a class on it. Is it that easy? Is it as simple as going to YouTube and looking up a video on how to be a decoy? Is that how easy it is?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Because there's a lot that goes into being a decoy, and I don't think it's something you can learn on a video.
Okay, and how long now? When you guys said, have you guys been putting together your own training manual and to train up new decoys and stuff like that? How much practice do you think someone needs before they have it down? Like, how much training would you be recommending to a new decoy that you would get in PPH? Or is it all on the site, like on the job training, like you learn while doing?
Are you guys
while
going to
doing
answer?
pretty much.
I know.
Well, I'm giving Kim a chance here.
The decoys aren't normally talkers. I'd like to point that out to all of the viewers, both to Inside the Exposures and to the Boiling Point podcast. It is the decoys' jobs not to speak very much, not to use many words. So sometimes when I get them on the podcast, it takes a minute to get them going to actually start volunteering information and getting going. So, yeah. Now back to the question: how much time do you think it would take, like a new decoy? If you guys got a new team member that wanted to be a decoy, what would you put them through, or in terms of time, how long would it take?
I don't think there is a certain time. It depends on how much time they're actually putting into it, because some people can catch on easily. Some people, it might take weeks or months for them to catch on. There's things that you can say, cannot say. We have to constantly check their chat logs to make sure they're doing it right. We like for them to have a possible exposure, if not a exposure, before even moving them over into a real decoy.
Okay. So you like to look at, like, kind of look over their shoulder and monitor them until they at least even have an exposure under their belt.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, that's not bad.
There's
Diane,
that, and then also the amount of time that they have available, because being a decoy requires a lot of time, and a lot of people don't realize how much time exactly it takes. So
that, I believe, is probably, I would take a guess that is that the biggest thing that you guys have found when trying to recruit, get new decoys, is that they're not aware of the actual amount of time that it takes.
There's that problem, that they don't understand that, and also communication, because with us, we require a lot of communication from the people on our team. Yes,
you guys, I would imagine there has to be an enormous amount of communication between all you guys, daily, even, I would imagine. So that would, the amount of time. That's what I'm saying. You guys all work jobs too. You guys all have lives, jobs, kids, and you still dedicate your time to doing this. I think that's important for people to know also. Now let me switch back to Mike. Mike, in addition, other than if they want money, how can we tell if they are a legitimate group or a fake one?
Well, another easy indicator is when they go live and there's not an exposure. Like, they'll just go live, that's how you can tell if they're in it for clout. but usually the clout people are also the money people. So if they'll go live, for when they're on their way to a potential exposure, and then they'll sit in the car for a half an hour, and all this shit. We don't go live until I have eyes on the guy. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's when he's still in his car. Sometimes it's as soon as he gets out of the car. Sometimes it's as I'm walking up to him. But yeah, these people will go live and just talk and talk and talk for like an hour. And when the guy doesn't show up, then they talk for another hour about how the guy didn't show up. When the reality is the whole time was nothing but a money grab or a clout session. You know what I mean? Like you were just bored and you wanted to go live, dude. Like you could have stayed home.
Yeah, for views. Because the point, I would imagine that going live before you actually have eyes on it could potentially, interrupt your exposure. If you're going live 30 minutes before you're going to expose somebody, and this person happens to see that and it is going to that place, then you potentially just ruined your own exposure. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing people got to keep in mind. Is I'd love to post like, oh, on our way to an exposure. Like I'll post on my personal profile, tune into PPH at 5 o'clock or whatever, we might have an exposure, but I would never post on, publicly that we've got an exposure coming up, because if word gets out to the guy, then, it's just stupid. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Everybody does it different, but that's a clear indicator that somebody's fraudulent, in my opinion.
Going live too early. Yeah, that makes sense for all those reasons that we just talked about there. Now, what about these people, that group, the page that I told you about? And I'm not going to say their name on my podcast. I'm not giving them any kind of free marketing or nothing, so I'm not mentioning them. But on that page, did you see that this guy wants you to take a picture of your photo ID in order to become a member of his whatever?
There's been other teams. I remember back a few years ago, it was a requirement for one team. Now we do, when someone signs up to be, say, a decoy, I get their name and birthday and the city that they're from, and I run my background check, and as long as everything comes up, then there's no issue. And almost every single time it does, because if you're an established adult, if you got any bills in your name, you're going to pop up on a very general background check. Now, if someone doesn't come up on a background check, they're either lying about something or they're way too young to dive into anything. You know what I mean? Like the one guy that we did the episode of Inside the Exposure for, right? Now, he's a predator, but same approach to a background check. He lived with his grandmother. He was in his 20s, but he nothing comes up on a background check because he's always lived with someone. He never had anything in his name, no car, no nothing. Just way under the radar kind of lifestyle. So, if someone doesn't show up on a background check, then there's something else going on there if they're telling the truth. So, I would never ask for an ID. Because good.
You only do it for the on people you're exposing then, or on people that you're hiring for the team.
Right.
Which makes sense. I mean, if hiring somebody for this kind of work, a background check, it certainly would be, I think, in the picture.
Really, the only thing as far as onboarding someone, I'm looking for just verifying who they are, so they're not, I know who I'm dealing with, but also if they have crimes against children. That's really all we look for. I don't care about DUIs or anything like that. We've had people apply the one woman had an open case she had a bunch of counts of what do you call it, of minors. She got pulled over, had drugs in the car with her kids in the car, so she got
endangering a minor.
Yeah, thank you. And open case, and she's like, aside from like 10 DUIs, I'm like, wait, sorry, I don't mind the DUIs, but you seem kind of reckless. And so we had to deny her, obviously.
Yeah, endangering kids is certainly something you probably don't want on your record if you're going to be doing this kind of work.
That's
And
the one thing you can't have.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, that completely makes sense. That you would check for those reasons and to confirm who they are. You don't want just, to let the wrong person into your organization for many different reasons, not the least of which that it could damage your own reputation, your organization's own reputation.
Right. And if someone were to fall for that guy's shtick, you're going to give some random guy who looks like a slime ball on YouTube, like your driver's license number, like a picture of your ID gives a lot of information. You know what I mean? And you're essentially handing this guy your identity, and he does not look like he's on the up and up.
No.
You know what I mean? Like he looks like a fucking slime ball, dude.
Yeah, I told you off camera after yesterday's or Friday's Inside the Exposure. I said this looks like a guy that you're eventually going to come face to face one day, and he's going to be on the wrong side of the exposure. Is what he looks like to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. As I said, he's like in these Facebook groups that are for predators. And just as a side note, when you come across these groups like he was talking about, you don't want to report them to Facebook because then they'll be taken down. You want to report something like that to the links that we post, like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, ic3.gov. They handle, because if you got the group shut down, then they scatter and then they start other groups. If you just get the link for the group and report that, let the authorities handle it, they'll get all the information they need before it gets shut down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good to know too, actually, because I come across fake profiles every day. I get friend requests from fake profiles at least every week. At least once a week, I get some fake profile asking to request me. Now, I always report on Facebook, but I never thought about trying to do that because some of these profiles are questionable, to say the least. So yeah, that's good. So report it to the authorities. Don't just report it to Facebook. Because Facebook will just close them down, and then, as Mike said, they'll just scatter. So report them to the authorities. That's definitely the way to do it.
All right.
Are there any other and legitimate exposures? That's the other thing. I mean, I would imagine that if you're a real exposure group, then you have exposures on your page, and not just you talking about how you expose people. You would actually show the exposures.
Yeah, that's a big. That makes me question this guy even more. It's like, what are you doing? Like you're in these groups full of perverts. You're talking about them. You're saying how you're exposing these guys, yet you have yet to expose anyone. You're just in these groups, reading the content on your YouTube channel. What the fuck are you doing, dude? It reminds me of the other team. I'm not going to say their name. Where he asked for dick pics and he asked, pushes the meat and all that. It's another team in Pennsylvania. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're asking for dick pics. First of all, that erases any credibility that you've got right there as far as an exposure goes. And why are you asking for dick pics, dude? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you shouldn't. I mean, not only that, but that's just not the way you do things. The decoys never request anything; they never ask anything. So let's go back to the decoys here, because you guys don't give any information. You guys do pictures occasionally if they ask, or if they're persistent about it. You'll do some pictures. You guys use technology to lower pictures of yourselves to make yourselves look the appropriate age, or you have volunteers to do that. But you guys don't ever solicit anything from them, right?
No, that's totally against our standards.
Yes, because, and why do you not solicit? I know the reason, but let's assume that there's some people who don't know watching.
As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to requesting things like that, you're pretty much luring them in. And that's putting you as the responsible party for what's happening. Whereas if they offer them, that's all on them.
Yeah. Now, you guys also, the decoys, you guys obviously, you guys don't ever do nude pictures. And also, I was talking to Mike, you guys also don't do any kind of cleavage and no skimpy outfits. It's always fully clothed, and it's not always even a full body shot. Most of the time, it's just a selfie.
Right.
And of course, as I said, technology is what you guys use. And then when you guys have volunteers, do you have a preference, Kim and Diane, on if you prefer technology to a volunteer? Or no preference?
I prefer the
preference for me.
technology. I prefer the technology now, because since I've started using that, if I have somebody that wants me to prove my identity that I'm real, and they ask me to do a selfie holding up 2 fingers, I can do it, or to hold up a piece of paper with their name on it and the date, I can do that.
Okay.
And it totally validates who I say I am to them.
Okay. And Kim, how do you handle something like that? If someone wants to verify your identity by making you hold fingers up or something, what do you do?
I'm different. I just don't do it.
You just don't do it.
The camera's broke.
I'll either say that I can't, or the camera's broken, or
Yeah, that's something I.
If you don't trust me, then what's like basically what's the point in talking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't do it.
Okay, and is that's just a personal preference you have that you just don't do that?
Yeah, and plus it works better if everybody doesn't do the same thing or have the same lines, because then they catch on. If we got 5 decoys using the same things or doing the same things, it's going to, so we have different stories. We do things differently.
Yeah, each decoy has their own backline story, or background story. Me and Kim definitely are different types of decoys and lead totally different types of lives. I'm the sassy bitch, hence the ghetto grandma nickname. Kim is the innocent, kind of laid back kind of girl. So it plays out really well when we end up talking to the same person, because they don't question anything on it.
Hey, really? And how often has that happened? That you guys have been talking to the same person?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
All the time.
That's just as shocking as, when I asked you how long it took to start getting, messages after you set up a profile. Really? So you guys are often talking to the same people?
Yeah.
On a regular basis.
Wow.
Multiple decoys.
I brought up.
Go ahead,
at
Mike.
a lot of exposures, I'll say to the guy, "Have you ever spoken to anyone else, any other kids?" And they'll say no, and I'm like, "Bullshit," because you're talking to our other decoys.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard you say that. I heard you ask him that question before, and I hear you always, say, bullshit to him, and I always wondered. I'm like, I wonder if it's because they talking to, people with multiple people within Pennsylvania predator hunters. What kind of luck is that?
Well, one of the podcasts that you did on the Boiling Point, Woodrow Wilson is a prime example. He's talked to every single decoy.
Woodrow Arnold. Woodrow Wilson is a president.
Sorry. Well, whoever. Woodrow. We'll just say Woodrow. Yeah. He is a prime example, though, because he's talked to every single decoy we have.
Really? So now how do you guys do that when you're talking, if you're both talking to the same person at the same time and not at different times? Do you guys coordinate then who says what, or who is made closer to the meetup? You just keep it going?
Go ahead, Kim. Sorry.
Basically, everybody keeps doing their own thing. No one really knows what each other is saying to them. Now, whenever it comes to an actual exposure, the day of, everybody will back off to let that exposure go through. Otherwise, the other decoys will distract him, and there's a chance for him not showing up. But up until the day of, it just keeps going.
Okay, that makes sense too. Okay, so on the day of an exposure, then the other decoys will back off then to make sure that he's not getting confused, because I would imagine it's not very hard to confuse some of these guys.
Well, it's more to make sure that it's not so he doesn't back out of the exposure because he's got all these other options.
Yeah, okay.
If it's go time and if he's hesitant because he's got all these other options, we don't want to waste our time. So psychologically, he's thinking, all right, I'll go with this one because she's still talking.
Okay, that makes sense then. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely never expected you guys to be talking to the same person. That's information to me. I never ever thought that would be the case. I can't believe that. Well, it makes sense though. These guys are obviously sick, so and they want what they want, so it makes sense. Is there any other thing that you guys can think of that I'm missing on how to be able to tell if an exposure group is a legitimate exposure group or a fake one? Because I tried to look in and try to come up with things in my head on just the things that I observed between Pennsylvania predator hunters and some of the other fake exposure groups. Because it's really not that hard to tell the difference. Just the things that we've gone over, actual exposures. They don't want money. They don't want your information. Those three things right there are three good criteria to tell if an exposure group is legitimate or not. But are there any other ones that people can look for? Or you think
I'd say just if you go to their platform and you see exposures, then they're probably, legitimate. If you see more Cash App and PayPal links than you do exposures, then that's probably a good sign that they're less than reputable. Because here's the thing, it's all right if you do this and you get your money, that's fine. That's all you know what I mean? Good for you. But as long as you're doing it the right way, because almost every time you come across one of these pages, their chat logs are, they're pushing the meat and all this. They break every rule just for content to put money in their Cash App. You know what I mean?
Yes. And now I'm glad you just said that also, the content. That's the other thing. You and I have had conversations before, not on camera, about how you're not producing content. It doesn't matter if it's 4 months between an exposure, then that's how long it is. You don't do anything extra. I mean, except for inside the exposure now, but that's more of an extension of the exposures than content producing. It's just drawing more awareness to it. Right. But that's the other thing, content producing. You guys are not here and they're not on Facebook and doing what you do for content. You're doing it for the work.
Right. I could easily, go live. I could easily, give the green light to expose some guys who haven't met the threshold and go live for an hour and a half, sitting in Wawa, dropping my Cash App and my PayPal, which, by the way, is PA Pred Hunt. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. It's all PA Pred Hunt. So.
Yeah. Now, if someone actually tries to donate money to that and you find out that there's nothing there, don't be surprised.
Or is it real? I never expect anything. No, that's real.
Yeah. Oh, is it real? Okay. Well, then there you go. If you want to, then there you go. Of course, I can't even get Mike to set up a storefront for his merchandise, but that's okay too. I understand it. And look at that. Mike is wearing the Boiling Point podcast shirt today. So make sure you check out our storefront, bonfire.com/store/Boiling Point podcast. Get a plug in for the storefront there quick. I want to, before I forget anything else, shout out to the decoys, Kimberly, Diane, and all the other decoys with Pennsylvania predator hunters. They do things that no one should ever have to do, and they read things no one should ever have to read. And they get pictures that no one should ever have to see. So, mad props to them for doing what they do, because without them, there is no Pennsylvania predator hunters. There is no Mike behind the camera. There is no me on Inside the Exposure. So without the decoys, there's nothing. So shout out to the decoys. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you guys do for that. I think we're just going to make this a shorter episode this evening. It does not need to be a long one. We pretty much covered everything that I think I wanted to cover to make sure people know the difference between legitimate and fake exposure groups. And also, please don't ever give your information. Never, ever take a picture of your license and give it to somebody. Never. Pennsylvania Predator Hunters, the Boiling Point podcast, we will never ask you for your personal information. So, that is a no-no. If there's a group asking for it, then that's big red flag right there. Okay. You don't need to give your information to be able to support a group or a page that does this kind of work.
Exactly.
So for Kimberly and Diane, thank you. The decoys of PPH, thank you for being on the podcast this evening.
Thank you.
Mike,
Thanks for having us.
Mike, thank you for being back on the podcast again. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll have you guys on again soon. This relationship between the Boiling Point podcast and PPH seems to be bearing fruit for everybody. So let's keep it going. Every Friday, well, almost every Friday, maybe every other Friday, Inside the Exposure. Make sure you look for that. It's a live show, so make sure you look for that. It'll be between 5 and 8 p.m. on Friday nights. It varies. The time varies. And, of course, check out Mike's The Pennsylvania Predator Hunters. That's facebook.com/pa.predhunter. And then the Inside the Exposure is facebook.com/pa.predhunt. The Boiling Point Podcast, we're on Facebook, Parler, YouTube, and Rumble. So please check us out. Share this episode. Share all our episodes out. That's how we're going to continue to grow this podcast. We need shares. That's what we need most, shares and views. So please help us with that. Storefront, if you want to help us further than that. All the links to the Pennsylvania Predator Hunters, to my storefronts, all of it is available in the description of the videos, no matter where it's posted. So go check out the links and go check that out. Kimberly, Diane, Mike, and I'm your host, JD, and that's the end. I'm not around, have you found? I'm always on you.